Hello, everybody. I think we'll get started. It's 7 p.m. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session on how to find top SaaS sales talent and scale to the moon. Thank you for joining as well, such a late hour. And I also know this is the beginning of the final run up to Christmas. The festive period has officially started in my household as I found myself eating a mince pie for breakfast this morning. This presentation is aimed at SaaS companies who are thinking about growing their sales team and making their first hire without breaking the bank. From experience, this is an area where many SaaS businesses, especially scale-ups, they really struggle in this area. So the aim of tonight's presentation, I'll keep it to a maximum of 30 minutes, is to really give you some actionable advice on how to run the whole recruitment process better and avoid many of the pitfalls around hiring sales talent. I'm also going to tell you a bit about a service that I offer, which takes away the headache around hiring sales talent and onboarding them. Stay around to the end as well, because I'll be sharing with you a great resource, an interview playbook. This is something to really help you structure your interviews more effectively and be more successful when it comes to hiring talent. Before we get underway, not in the chat, in the Q&A, could you just let me know where you're kind of dialing in from and just say hello so I know that some people are there? That would be great. Okay, so I see we have some people from Belgium. Hooray. Great, Stefan. I see there's a few others there as well. Grant, I know Grant. Mark as well. Somebody not too far away, just around the corner. Great stuff. If you've got any questions, could you just pop them in the Q&A and I'll deal with them at the end of the presentation. All right, so who am I? Who is Sales Mentor? So I've spent basically over 20 years selling SaaS solutions, data and tech solutions in basically in the financial space. So I've helped large businesses like FactSet, Moody's Analytics, as well as startups and scale-ups basically get customers and grow their business. Now, after many years being an employee, I decided back in 2019 to start my first company. I guess like some of you, I kind of wanted to build something myself, create a legacy, if that's not too grand a word. And that's basically why I set up Sales Mentor. But I think actually way before 2019, I think I came to terms with the fact that I don't fit into the corporate mold. I have to do something on my own. Specifically, I remember I was working for a big corporate and I'd spent basically 6 years traveling on the road, across Europe, at minimum 3 days a week, running between airplanes, all that kind of nonsense. And I'd often get home way beyond midnight. And then obviously the next day you've got to be back in the office. In this one particular instance, I left 5 minutes early at the end of the day. And I remember my micromanaging boss back then headed me off at the lifts and he accused me of being a part-timer. And I guess I just felt winded when he said that because, I'd been busting my balls, beating target, as I said, year in and year out. So really, Sales Mentor is all about, I've condensed my knowledge, 20 plus years knowledge in sales and experience with what works. I've created systems for founders and scale-ups really to make a success of their solution. The people that I work with, they generally have a great product, but they're not really great at taking it to market and they need a lot of help. So I have two key service areas. One is the sales and mentoring. So here I mainly work with founders and their teams really to kind of develop their sales playbook, all of the tools and processes for success. And then the other service area is STaaS, or Sales Talent as a Service, which I'll tell you a bit more about later on. So what we're going to cover today, so everything from when to hire your first salesperson through to finding the best candidates, what to look for in high achieving candidates, how much it costs to actually hire, how to ensure that the sales hire is a success. And then, as I said, I'll give you a bit more about Sales Talent as a Service. Before we get stuck into the meat of the presentation, I came across this quote online. I have to admit, when I first read it, I thought it's a bit of an exaggeration, but actually When you drill down into the detail of it, you can see how a bad sales hire can cost you those huge sums of money. So it's not just the cost of replacing them if it doesn't work out. You've got a lot of sunk costs around, for example, recruitment agencies. If you've used one of them, they can charge you anything from 10 to 30% of the first year remuneration package. And the key is really the lost sales pipeline. So if your salesperson suddenly disappears, you run the risk of losing those deals that they've been developing over time. And then, of course, you've got all the issues around morale. If it's a bad fit, if the person's really creating a bad atmosphere, that can actually translate into your bottom line if other staff members leave. So you can see, as you start to put these together, it's probably not that much of an exaggeration after all. When to hire your first salesperson, this is really key. And I see when I talk to founders and kind of scale-ups, there's this tendency to jump on the bandwagon and start hiring a sales guy immediately. And this really is often a recipe for disaster, because you can't just hire a salesperson and expect them to work miracles. You need to have put in some of the work yourself. So actually thinking about, what the sales process is, what kind of roadmap is that sales hire going to follow in order to deliver what you expect. So there are 3 things I think that you really need to have down before you hire a sales guy. PMF, product market fit. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this. This really means that you've got some traction already. You know the right buttons to press when it comes to sales. For example, who your target market is in terms of their job title, the industry. You kind of know the right messaging. So that's product market fit. Then really key here is make sure that your ROI stacks up. And here I'm talking very basic terms about your unit economics. So, and I've seen this happen, this might sound super obvious, but there's no point going out and hiring a sales guy who you're going to pay, say, 50K a year if you're selling a product that you're only selling for, say, £100 a year, because no matter how much peddling they're going to do, it's going to be a really tough call to make it to those kind of numbers and make the ROI stack up. The other key ingredient for success before you hire is having a sales playbook. In simple terms, a sales playbook, it covers everything you need for sales success. And I do a lot of work with customers to help them develop their sales playbook. It will cover everything from your messaging, your target audience, things about the tools you're going to use, the CRM system, automations, your sales scripts, contact databases, basically everything you need in order to be a success. And actually, I'll show you later some useful stuff with the ROI element. There's a simple equation that you can use, which just kind of helps you to give you a framework to work out whether a hire makes sense or not. So have these 3 lined up before you even start going about hiring your salesperson. So how to find the best candidates? Well, the first thing to say really is there are many different types of salespeople, each with their own distinct kind of advantage and disadvantages. For building the funnel, the kind of top of the funnel, you have BDRs or business development reps. They're responsible for lead generation and cold outreach. The great ones, just like Chuck Norris, I'm showing my age here, they are relentless and focused on winning. They're happy to pound the phones and get you the crucial first meeting. It's all about getting the first meeting. If you need to build a top of your funnel, as I say, you need more Chuck Norrises. However, it's worth saying that business development reps, they're more focused on the top of the funnel. They're less accomplished when it comes to running the sales meetings, the more kind of later sales process. So for the more kind of running the meeting stage, carrying on further down the sales process, you need someone more senior, and they go under different monikers, different names: senior account exec, senior account manager. The good ones, they're smooth operators, just like this guy, Leonardo DiCaprio, and they make sales look really easy and effortless. And they can be relied on. They can be relied on to run great sales meetings, demos. They make sure you're always moving forwards towards the close. And actually, some of them are also very happy to do the outreach, the kind of cold outreach, the cold calling as well. Some aren't. So that's worth checking. If you've got a complex solution, I would say, and you're selling to large enterprise customers, I would recommend that you have a more senior guy, because you need someone who kind of has gravitas and, someone who's credible. They need to take control of the sales process and involve different stakeholders effectively. You need someone with a fair amount of experience under their belt to run that effectively. So the best type for your business, well, we kind of mentioned some of this already. And depending on your situation, some approaches work better than others. A lot of scale-ups have a problem with building the top of the funnel. So here it's all about getting the first meeting, the cold outreach. So this means you need, someone concentrated absolutely on the cold calling, the cold email, the cold outreach. So it's all about getting some BDRs. What I see working really well is hiring at the same time 2 business development reps. This creates a kind of good dynamic of, I guess, competition, but also companionship, because it can be quite lonely if you're, pounding the phones all day. And as I said, they're all about cold outreach and setting up those initial meetings. But they will need someone to hand the meeting to your side if you've just got BDRs. So think about, internally, whether you have resources, if you're a founder, or if you have senior personnel internally who can run the actual meeting and make a success of it, because the first meeting, you've got to make a really good impression and make sure you're running those meetings effectively, so you always have a next step. Now, if you're in a position to afford a senior account manager, a good hire, as I said, can take control of the whole process, right from the cold calling to closing, but inevitably they're going to cost you more. And make sure, if you do hire one of those senior guys, and that's your only kind of initial hire, make sure that they'll be responsible for cold calling too. An ex-colleague of mine that I work with in the corporate world, she took on a role at an ESG startup, kind of early stage scale up. And I remember speaking to her 2 months into her new role, and I said, how's it going? And I remember she was complaining about the fact that no one was giving her any leads. And I said, well, look, actually, it's your responsibility to start building the funnel. You can't just sit around and wait for it to happen. So you kind of see what I'm saying. Inevitably, that person left because it wasn't going to work out. So think about, what resources you have internally, whether you have someone to run those meetings. But as I said, hiring a couple of BDRs, I think, is a good place to start. Okay, what to look for in the best candidates? I think the first thing to say here is have a defined process. So the first step is to really get down on paper what the candidate specification and job spec are. So be as clear as possible. So if you're looking for a BDR, make sure the metrics are in there around expectations, around cold calls, the number of cold calls a day, the number of meetings they need to set up. Also remember that the job spec is a kind of a bit of an advertisement for your company. So think about how you can present your company in a favorable light, why they should choose you, why you're a great company to work for. So once you've got the position down, the job candidate spec, obviously you've got to do some advertising. I'm not going to talk about the different job platforms. There's so many out there. You might want to use some recruitment agencies that can work very well. Remember, they cost you a fair whack, anything, as I said, from 10 to 30% of the first year's remuneration. And also remember that the recruitment agencies, they only actually shortlist the candidates and send them to you. They don't actually do any of the interviewing, the selection process. And then when it comes to the interviews, make sure you have, a clear set of questions that you ask all candidates. The interview playbook that I'm going to share with you at the end, it has a lot more detail around this, kind of the right questions to ask and so on. I mean, one of the ones that I like to ask, one of the questions I like to ask is, just tell me what you understand about the company, my company. And this is a great filter. Just the other day, I had a candidate I was interviewing for a senior role. And I asked him that question, and he replied, well, I was hoping that you could fill me in on that. I mean, clearly that's a big no. If he hasn't even been bothered to find out about the company, it's a pretty hopeless situation. If the first interview goes well, always get them back for a second interview. The purpose of the second interview is to get them to present a business plan. And what I normally ask for is, present me a roadmap. The first 3 months, what are you going to do? What are you actually going to bring to the table? And the way this works is I give them, a target. So, if they get hired, they're going to have this revenue target. and then leave it up to them to go away and back out the KPIs. So what they're actually going to do in terms of, daily activity, cold calling, setting up meetings, all of that good stuff. Another good question to ask at the interview stage is, I often ask this, well, what do you like most about sales? Sales is a kind of, it's a long journey. You've got everything from your prospecting, cold outreach to getting the meeting. Ask them that question, because that's quite revealing about what motivates them, what they like, what they least like about sales. And again, it's a great filter. An interview that I did a couple of weeks ago, it was for a role of business development rep, and the guy actually responded to me that he hates doing cold calling. Well, thank you, but no thank you. He should have read the job description. Yeah, so you get what I'm saying. So that's a little bit about the process. Personality traits are really important for good to get good salespeople. And I recommend, it sounds a bit creepy, but there are tools out there where you can do personality profiling. Obviously, it's not set in stone. It's more of an indicative, rough approach to finding out a little bit more about them. There are a few cool tools based on AI that I use. One's called Humantic AI, and the other one's called Crystal Nose. And they're basically Google add-ins, and they analyze the LinkedIn profile of the candidates. It kind of gives you a very quick and dirty idea about, how outgoing they are, what motivates them, that kind of stuff. And from my experience, working in sales, as I said, 20 plus years, a key personality trait for success is being resilient. I'm not saying they have to be Rambo, but they have to be, they have to deal with the lows of selling. Sales is a tough profession. There's a lot of rejection. I remember, in particular, when I was working for a wealth tech startup, I would sit in like one of these like phone booths, basically all day, calling Germany, trying to get the first meeting, to present. And some days you wouldn't get one single meeting, and that is just soul destroying. So you need, resilient people. The other one, I would say, this goes without saying, people who are competitive, salespeople who are motivated by, outperforming and all of that good stuff. Building rapport, this is so important. Listen, you don't have to be a Prince Charming, but you want people who can create that human connection very quickly. If the fact of the matter is, we buy from people that we like, and if you've got someone who can't build rapport, it's a disaster. Just the other day, I was shortlisting for a position, and there were two candidates. One didn't check all the boxes, I have to be honest, but he was great at the interview. He had great rapport. He had high energy. You could just feel that he was very enthusiastic. He was very good at that rapport building. And then there was another candidate I looked at. I looked at his CV. It looked amazing. It literally checked all of our boxes. And I kind of in my head thought, oh, okay, this is going to be the guy. And then when I got him on the interview, he was just awful. There was no energy. It was very monotone. And yeah, so it's all about the rapport. Active listeners. Even at big sales organizations, so-called successful people, I've worked with them, they're just not good at listening. They talk over the prospect. They're just waiting for their turn to pitch. The really good salespeople, they're active listeners. And selling SaaS is all about selling a solution to a problem. Now, before you can sell the solution, you need to find out what the problem is. So this is where really good questioning it comes into play, and it's been proven time and time again that the most successful salespeople, they're the ones that ask more of the best questions and that they answer them. Confident, again, this seems quite obvious, but it's worth pointing out. You need someone who really believes in your solution and who's at ease at presenting it. And this is really important when it comes to objection handling, which happens all the time in sales. And then money. I mean, for me, this is obvious, but sometimes not when you talk to potential candidates. Good salespeople are all about what's in it for me. They want to know, about the commission structure. They want to know how their performance is going to be rewarded. And actually, I use this as a filter at the interview stage. So I always wait for the candidate to actually ask me the question about commission. If they're not asking you about commission, that's a warning sign. Organized, yeah. I mean, organized, yeah. I'm not the most organized of people, I admit it, but being organized is so key here. The fact of the matter is, when you reach out to a prospect, most of the time they're not in buying mode. This is why it's really important that you have systems and procedures in place, and that the salesperson follows those systems and procedures to follow up and go and contact them. You've got to have a good follow-up sequence. The fact of the matter is, 90% of salespeople make the first call, only 5% make the sixth call and subsequently get the business. So this is why being organized is so key. And then finally, I would add action. I'm not saying you need to be action man, but it's important that your sales hire is a self-starter, that they're going to roll the punches and get stuff done. It's all about execution. At the end of the day, we're all busy, especially you as a SaaS founder or a senior leader at a scale-up. You do not have time to go and manage this salesperson. You want someone who can be trusted to go and execute and take action. I mean, one thing that I see quite often when a company's ready to make their first hire, they inevitably go after a very senior person, someone that's maybe worked at a big corporate company, who was maybe a sales manager, and inevitably it never works out. And the reason for this, I believe, is because they're probably used to having a lot of stuff done for them. At the previous role they had at a corporate, they had an extensive marketing department. Maybe there was even a team of business development reps to hand them leads. That doesn't happen. You want a scale up, you want someone that can actually do this stuff from the ground up. And I always say, my kind of rule of thumb is, if their job title has anything like manager, consultant, or strategy in it, I tend to avoid them as kind of initial hire. Look, the strategy side of things is down to you as the SaaS leader. You don't want someone who's thinking and coming up with strategy. You want someone who's all about action. So how much does it cost to hire a salesperson? Well, you can probably imagine how long is a piece of string. There are so many, there's such a range of talent and salary levels. In London, the truth of the matter is, I mean, for a BDR, you're looking at base salary for a business development rep from around 40K, and then the same again if they make target, so 80K overall. If it's a more senior person you're going after in London, you're looking at six-figure base, so 100 plus the same again if they make target. I mean, look, this is all fine and dandy, but I think the question should probably be reframed in what is the ROI of actually hiring that person. And I use a very simple ROI equation. I've called it sales mental ROI equation. And this is a really good way to just frame whether the decision makes sense or not. So think about, first and foremost, what a realistic target would be for that particular hire. So, what's your average deal size? How many of those could they conceivably win in a year? Then you subtract all your hiring costs. So your hiring costs are like maybe recruitment fees, advertising the position, there are a few others, and then divide that by the total candidate compensation, including the comp if they make target. And that will give you a very clear picture straight away of whether it makes sense to hire a salesperson or not. So how to ensure the hire is a success? Well, first and foremost, get your target really clear. There's nothing more, I guess, demotivating than having an unrealistic sales target. And the worst thing that you could have is if they leave after a few months because of all the sunk costs. Next, I would say structure your commission, align your targets and your commission. So basically what I'm saying here is you want to structure your commission so you're encouraging outperformance. And what I see working quite well at other companies is, maybe they have a target of 2 million at a rate. So from 0 to 1 million, halfway to target, you maybe pay them out at 5%. And then from 1 million to 2 million, you pay them out at a higher rate, say 7.5%. And then if you really want the high performers, and I've seen this work very well, is you basically give them a higher rate above the 2 million. So basically if they go over target, they get something like 10%. That can work really well. The other thing I would say is let them get on with the job, give them ownership. Look, you've hired a sales guy, trust them to deliver, give them the space and autonomy they need. The best salespeople, they actually see themselves as businesses themselves. And this is actually more so the case if you get your commission structure right and you're performing, you're rewarding outperformance. this lack of trust that I see out there, micromanaging, it's the fastest way to lose people. And I mentioned at the start my experience with my micromanaging boss. The day I resigned, my colleague also resigned from the same team for the same reasons. And he had to go away, the boss, and explain why he'd lost his top 2 salespeople, basically through micromanaging. Create accountability. Okay, look, I've said all that stuff about giving them ownership. That still stands, but you also need to have regular check-ins to make sure that they're progressing and they're doing what they say they're going to do. So, this is a good opportunity on, maybe a weekly check-in to see if there are any roadblocks, if there's any areas they're struggling with, and to provide a little bit of support. Take it from me, even senior salespeople, they need encouragement from time to time. And then mentoring, I've kind of touched on this. We can all learn new things. I think we all need opportunities to grow. I will say the opposite of growing is dying. So, provide some mentoring and growth opportunities anywhere that you can. And always remember, the mindset is so key around selling. So it's very, even with senior salespeople, it's very easy to get demotivated. So anything that you can offer in terms of encouragement, that's greatly appreciated. You're probably thinking, stepping back, there's a lot to think about here. There's a lot of complexity. Don't have the time. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. I get that. And that kind of brings me on to why I developed a sales talent as a service. Look, many of the leaders at SaaS companies I speak to, they know full well all the stuff that I presented previously about, the dangers of hiring the wrong salesperson in terms of, lost pipeline, rehiring costs. A lot of them, frankly, they're just overwhelmed. They wear many hats. They're juggling many balls. They just don't really have the time to dedicate to interviewing and making the selection process work. And that's really why I came up with STaaS. So as you can see, it's a 5-pronged process. We work, first of all, to define the ideal candidate for you, so understand who the best type of salesperson will be. Then we have a global network of recruitment partners. So we go out and basically shortlist candidates that coincide with your criteria. Then we actually run the interviews and assessments. We have a rigorous process where we really find the perfect match for your business. And then number 4, we do the whole onboarding. This, onboarding has got to be very effective if the candidate is going to start delivering from day one. So we take care of all of that. We have a whole system to bring them up to speed quickly. And then finally, we have mentoring and reporting. So these are weekly team check-ins. We report back to management. We find out if there are any kind of needs for skills development, basically making sure that they're accountable and they're delivering. So I can tell you it's a solution that gets really good ROI for our customers. We guarantee at least a 25% uplift in your monthly recurring revenue within 6 months. And also at least 50% more qualified leads within the 6 months. What's more, because of our kind of global outreach, we're able to source candidates at really competitive rates. So to give you an idea, I'm working with a company at the moment. We've just selected their senior sales guy, and we've basically got him at 50% of market rate of the equivalent hire in London. So that's STaaS. If it sounds like something that could be of use to you, the next step would be to just have a quick chat with me, and I can tell you a bit more and see if it would be a good fit for your business. You can schedule a meeting at that link there. And then the interview playbook, which all of you will get a copy of, it really goes into more detail about the stuff that I've talked about today, running the recruitment process. And there's also a kind of a pro forma of the really good questions to ask at an interview. So I think we're within the 30 minutes. That really is it from me. I said I would be quite short. Are there any questions? Let me just have a look here. Okay. Yes, there's a question here. The BDRs, are they the same as SDRs? I mean, I don't get too kind of obsessed about the terminology. I think SDRs are more to do with inbound lead generation. The BDRs are outbound. So they kind of do, the BDRs are doing the cold outreach. Another question here. You don't see micro. Okay, so question here, you say don't micromanage. Is there a middle ground to keep salespeople accountable? Is that something you can help us with? Yeah, absolutely. So, if it's more kind of on the day-to-day management basis, we can run that for you. It's absolutely not a problem. That would usually take the form of a weekly check-in, maybe maximum an hour a week, just to get them to talk through their pipeline, what their activity's been like to date, and just making sure that they're performing to target. To see if there are any more questions here. Okay, no more questions. Well, thank you very much for attending. And as I say, I'll send by email the interview playbook. And do let me know if we can help in any way. Have a good one.